Quiet on set. Speed. And action.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
You know how to whistle, don't you? You just put your lips together and blow.
Welcome to the Foot and Friends on Film podcast, discussing everything about cinema. Now here's your host, Nick Baylor.
What's in the bar?
Houston, we have a problem.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm not what you think. You're crazy.
Welcome to the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where we discuss everything about cinema. I'm your host, Nick Mailer. On today's episode, John is going to be joining me to count down his picks for the 25 worst movies of all time. You heard me correctly, folks. Today's going to be a crapshoot. We're talking about the worst of the worst. So take your seats and get your popcorn. It's your feature presentation. As mentioned, we're the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where our motto is any film you haven't seen is a new experience. What else needs to be said? Today we're talking about garbage movies. John's going to count down his 25 worst films of all time. So without further ado, please welcome the big man, John H. Foot. So today's going to be a bit of a change of pace. Normally, John and I get together and we praise great actors and filmmakers for their exemplary work. We're flipping it on its head today. As decided by John, which is also in an article you can find on our site, we're going to be counting down the top 25 worst films of all time. Anything you want to say to set this up, or should we just jump right in?
Yeah, I just want to clarify how I made my choices. I chose movies that had no right to be as bad as they were, with named directors for the most part, good actors, a well-known story. I didn't put any B movies in here, like Billy the Kid versus Dracula. Nothing from Ed Wood. Plan 9 from Outer Space is in here. Anything that had no chance of being remotely good is on the list. These are films that were just dreadful and shouldn't have been. As I say, had no right being as bad as they were.
All right. Are there any honorable mentions?
About 100.
Or sorry, should we say dishonorable mentions?
Dishonorable, yeah, dishonorable. I wish I could have included Batman and Robin, but I didn't. I wish I could have included the Green Lantern, yeah, and didn't. Superman 4 would certainly be on the list, and I just couldn't do it. At Long Last Love would be there. Daisy Miller would be there. 1941 would be there, but there just wasn't room.
All right. Well, you definitely took the words out of my mouth. I only had one dishonorable mention, my favorite bad movie, Batman and Robin. So,
Okay, well, there you go.
all right. Jumping in. Number 25, late stand-up comedian Richard Jeni, who was Jim Carrey's co-star in the I think it was 93 or 94 film, The Mask. He played his banker buddy. He had a rather hilarious stand-up comedy routine that was entirely centered around this film. We're talking about Jaws 4, The Revenge.
Just beyond stupid. Another great white shark has come back to Amity and killed Sheriff Brody, killed his son. And when Mrs. Brody decides to go to the tropics, she goes with a shark expert, Michael Caine, with her youngest son, and the shark stalks them, hunts them, knows where they are. When they're on land, the shark knows where they are. It can seemingly see them. Beyond ludicrous in every way. And one of those movies Michael Caine took for the paycheck when he was doing that in through the 80s. He made more movies in the 80s than any other actor, and 90% of them were shit. This is at the top of the list. Steven Spielberg must have saw this and just shook his head in disgust.
Doesn't the shark roar in this movie?
Yep.
Yeah, sharks don't have vocal cords.
Oh, no, it does all kinds of things. It thinks, and sharks don't think. They eat, they sleep, they make little sharks. That's it.
Yeah, this one beats a jet to the Bahamas.
Unbelievable. I mean, I went to see it knowing I shouldn't have, knowing better, but you know, I like to see everything. I like to see bad movies too, because you have to see the bad to appreciate the great.
Yeah.
And this just left me shaking my head. I don't think I'd been to a movie where there were so many walkouts. You know, people just get up partway through and sorry, had enough, out they went.
All right. Again, check it. Go to YouTube. Check out Richard Jeni, Jeni, Jaws 4. It's a hilarious stand-up bit. And again, it's all centered on how stupid this movie is. Coming in at number 24, we have, and this one sounds like a gem just from the title, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Sylvester Stallone trying desperately to be funny after Rhinestone crashed and burned, made a movie with Estelle Getty. Estelle Getty was best known as one of the Golden Girls. She was the oldest of the Golden Girls. And she plays Stallone's mother. Stallone's a cop, and Mom is always butting in to help him with his case. And, you know, Stallone is many things. He's a great physical actor, but when he has a lot of dialogue, it just doesn't work for him. And in this film, he has quite a lot of dialogue, and it's supposed to be comedic. And he just doesn't have the comedy chops. He truly doesn't. Estelle Getty does, but it's like she's talking to a wall. Stallone is about as animated as a steel post in this movie. Just terrible. Terrible.
Coming in at number 23, an incredibly notorious film starring Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, Gigli.
I don't even know how to describe this movie. Was it a romance gone wrong? Was it a caper film gone wrong? To me, it was two major movie stars who wanted to do a movie together, and someone should have said, stop, don't do this. They have zero chemistry together, and yet they were lovers at the time. And bad beyond belief. I like Ben Affleck as an actor. I think he's a very good actor in the right role. And this was just not the right role. And Jennifer Lopez has proven that she's got acting chops too. She was great last year in Hustlers, but not here. Not here. Just awful. Deserved every bad review it got.
I have to mention that another film came out shortly after this that also starred Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, and it often gets a lot of shit thrown at it, undeservedly so. Kevin Smith's Jersey Girl, which I really love and I think is a great film, and it's a great performance by Ben Affleck. And even him and Lopez at the beginning of this film, which she's only in for a minute, they actually have great chemistry, and they're both really, really funny. So don't confuse the two. Gigli is every bit as terrible as everyone says so.
I quite agree with you about Jersey Girl. I didn't mind it at all. I thought Affleck gave a really solid performance, and there was a lovely chemistry between he and the little girl.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved seeing George Carlin as his dad, and Liv Tyler's great in it. And it's a really, I mean, it's nothing grandiose or anything to write home about per se, but it's a really solid film, and it just, but from a smart screenwriter, good filmmaker, and it gets a lot of crap it doesn't deserve because of its association with Gigli. I
agree.
Coming to number 23, we have Tarzan the Ape Man.
This was brutal. They should have called it Jane, because Tarzan is really not even a secondary character. He's an extra. He's played by a bodybuilder, Miles O'Keefe, who I think made one movie and was never cast again. It was directed by John Derek, whose wife happened to be Bo Derek. And he spent the latter part of his career exploiting his wife's looks to no end. She was beautiful, no question, but she couldn't act. And everybody knew she couldn't act. You went to a Bo Derek movie to look at her and watch her hopefully take her clothes off. In this one, she plays Jane, who goes to Africa and of course meets Tarzan, who is this great hulking, lumbering ape man, and no chemistry at all. They barely speak through the movie. It doesn't really get cooking until the clothes come off and they're having sex. Richard Harris is in this movie. I mean, Richard Harris. And how John Derek talked him into making this crap, I don't know. It's just awful. Awful. The worst Tarzan movie ever made.
Something to be said for that in and of itself, I'm sure.
Well, when you think 2 years later, Robert Towne wrote Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, which was great, like a real serious masterpiece. And I don't know what John Derek was thinking. Obviously, he wasn't. He was just, how do I get my wife naked again on film so I can make money?
You know what's always bothered me about Tarzan?
What?
The fact that he's clean shaven most of the time, and that, and
Yeah.
like the one with Alexander Skarsgård, he's walking around shirtless. It's like, does this guy go for a wax all the time? It's like he's supposed to be a jungle man. Come on, he should at least have a beard.
There's a lot of holes in the Tarzan story. The ones in the 30s with Johnny Weissmuller were hugely popular and regular viewing on Sunday mornings when I was a kid. I saw each of them probably 20 times. And the original book is quite good. And when they went back and made Greystoke, I mean, it's beautifully done, handsomely mounted, directed, all of it. But just, this one was just brutal.
Coming in at number 22, an entry that ironically shares its title with a brilliant piece of art, and many, including Rolling Stone, would argue the greatest rock and roll album of all time, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
I don't even know whose idea it was to make this into a film. Somebody had the idea, I guess, after Tommy was such a big hit with The Who, to make a movie out of Sgt. Pepper. They cast Peter Frampton, who was riding a crest of popularity that year for his live album, and a whole bunch of singers and actors. The only one that remotely gives a good performance is Steve Martin, who plays Maxwell and sings Maxwell's Silver Hammer. The rest of it is just bunk, absolute bunk. And don't substitute the fucking Bee Gees for the Beatles. I mean, come on. And that's what they do. It was in and out of theaters so fast. I was amazed I had a chance to see it. But I did see it, and I'll never, ever get my 2 hours back, ever. And I've resented it ever since.
It's interesting because it's been demonstrated that you can make a good movie based on Beatles music. I mean, Yellow Submarine works for what it is, and I think Across the Universe is a masterpiece.
It is. Across the Universe is a masterpiece. Yesterday was a great film, the film from last year where the guy wakes up to an alternate universe and the Beatles have never been.
Yeah.
I mean, there are fantastic movies about Beatles music, but this one is just wretched.
Yeah. Number 21, Swept Away.
Yeah, I don't get Madonna. I just, great singer, great pop musician, probably the best marketer that's ever lived. She's an incredibly brilliant self-marketer, but she wants to be taken seriously as an actress. So she decides with her husband, Guy Ritchie, who was equally stupid on this, to remake one of the greatest Italian films ever made, Lina Wertmüller's Swept Away. And she plays a socialite who ends up stranded on a tropical island with a servant. And he eventually takes her by force sexually and changes her. I guess she has an orgasm for the first time and realizes life is okay with these people that are so beneath her. She virtually spits on them. She's embarrassing. She's absolutely embarrassing in the movie, because I wondered how much of the performance was really Madonna. I mean, I've interviewed Madonna for the film she made, and before the interview, we were given a list of questions that we were not allowed to ask, and not a single question on the list was anything I would have asked. And I just don't know what she's thinking. Here, clearly nothing. And her performance is terrible. The actor is the son of the original Swept Away actor, Giancarlo Giannini. And he certainly didn't do his father proud by being in this piece of garbage.
Madonna was in A League of Their Own, correct?
Yeah, and she wasn't bad in A League of Her Own, but they did a smart thing. They kept her in a supporting role, and they gave her slutty jokes. And I don't mean to sound misogynistic. I'm the furthest thing from that. But that's where she's best, in a role like that where she's got so little to do. When she played Eva Peron in Evita, I mean, some of the great actresses of all time have played that role on stage. And Madonna is just not among the greatest actresses of all time. Meryl Streep was going to do Evita with Oliver Stone. But Oliver Stone, being the pompous dick he is, refused to give her very much say in the script, which is a big mistake. She'd have won the Academy Award if she'd have played it easily. Michelle Pfeiffer was going to do it. She'd have won the Academy Award. Madonna does it and no, ruins it.
Number 20 is Pinocchio. Which Pinocchio are we talking about here?
Roberto Benigni's
Uh-huh.
live-action remake of Pinocchio in 2003. He had famously won the Academy Award for Life is Beautiful, which I think is the stupidest Best Actor Academy Award ever given. And they allowed him to redo Pinocchio. He cast himself as Pinocchio, so we have this 50-year-old man playing a child, which was creepy enough, but then he chose to play him with a falsetto voice. So we have this idiot Benigni screeching every piece of dialogue through the movie. And 10 minutes after he came to life as a little wooden boy, I wanted to pour gasoline on him and light him on fire. I couldn't wait for the movie to end, and I have never again seen a Roberto Benigni film. I never will. If I see his name in the titles, I don't see it. I walk away.
Number 19 is The Cat in the Hat.
Another one. And why? Why, Mike Myers, would you do this to us? The Cat in the Hat's a beloved storybook, and if they were going to make a movie about it, why not animate it? You know,
Right.
there was a Cat in the Hat animated on TV that looked like the drawings and was actually pretty good and pretty educational. This movie is just lame. And Mike Myers is a gifted guy, no question. He's a very talented man, but his ego runs rampant on movie sets. And apparently here, he walked all over the director, he walked all over everybody, and the results are up there on the screen. This was just a hairball of a movie that everybody hated. Kids hated. I took my daughter to see it, and she would, Dad, can we leave? Can we go? Can we go to the movie next door? Can we do anything else? And I was with her. You know, let's go.
Yeah, it is remarkable when people who are obviously talented deliver such crap. I maintain that Mike Myers is responsible for one of the most knee-slapping, gut-busting, hilarious monologues in cinematic history. From the first Austin Powers movie, when Dr. Evil is in group therapy and he tells the story of his childhood.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. I remember when he was at Second City, and a good friend of mine, Kevin McDonald, is one of the kids in the hall now. And Kevin would come home with stories about, you know, this guy, Mike Myers, was doing great work tonight. He thinks so fast. I've never seen anything like it. And then Mike Myers just kind of exploded in Hollywood with the Austin Powers movies. And I like those movies. They're spoofs, they're funny, they're dumb as hell, but they work. And why he thought he had to make this. And, you know, another one of his that should be on the list is The Love Guru, which is beyond awful. But, you know, couldn't put everything on there.
Number 18 might be a bit famous because I believe the poster for this movie appears in The Shawshank Redemption. I think I'm right on that, right? 1 million years BC?
Yep. Yeah, not so much the poster, but a poster from the film of Raquel Welch.
Okay.
It was a remake of a 1940 film called 1 Million Years BC that had Lon Chaney and Carol Landis in it before she committed suicide. And they decided to remake it, but for the scenes with the dinosaurs, rather than use stop motion visual effects, they actually took lizards and glued fins or other body parts to them and put them in miniatures so that they looked larger than life. The turtle that you see is a sea turtle, not even a full-grown one, but it's in the scene with the cavemen. The greatest special effect in the movie is Raquel Welch. I mean, she was gorgeous and had a body that was just, my God, this is why God created women. But she speaks, and in any movie she spoke in, it was over the minute she opened her mouth. She was dumb as a post and couldn't act a bit. And here she plays a cave woman who finds love with a rival tribe, and they avoid getting eaten by dinosaurs most of the film. But the dinosaurs aren't any type of dinosaur I've ever seen. And just a lame ass movie. It became famous for the poster that indeed you saw in The Shawshank Redemption. And Raquel Welch made a career out of looking like she did. But the lady could never act.
I didn't mind her on her guest spot on Seinfeld, but there was a lot of other stuff going on that was making that funny.
She played herself. She played
Yeah.
herself. You know, Kramer scenes with her where he has to go fire her. They're the best things in it.
Yeah. It should be noted, 1 million years BC, you're off by about 64 million years. If we're talking about dinosaurs, non-avian dinosaurs never lived with people. And you're right. lizards and dinosaurs are not the same thing. They are,
Absolutely not.
yeah. Just because the word saurus means lizard, it's not at all. No modern day lizards look like dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are much more closely related to modern day birds. So, needless to say, the science was off just a hair.
And this was the measuring stick for bad movies until Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band or Battlefield Earth or Exorcist II: The Heretic. This was the big bad one for many, many years.
Coming in at number 17, we have The Oscar.
Yeah, this one's stupid. 1966 movie about an actor who is a perfect prick. He makes enemies of everybody in Hollywood and then magically gets an Oscar nomination that he knows if he wins will make him Hollywood's golden boy, and he'll get to do everything he wants and everything will be forgiven because that's Hollywood. Stephen Boyd plays him. He's one of the most ridiculous characters in the history of the movies. And he does not win the Oscar. He sits there and the first name they say is Frank, and it ends up being Frank Sinatra, not Frank Fane, that wins the award. And he just keeps clapping maniacally at the end of the film. And you know his life is over. That's the only time he's going to go to the Oscars. He'll never get close again because they're going to blackball him from the industry. It's a really stupid look at politics in Hollywood and corruption in Hollywood. Is it accurate? Maybe some of it, but it's portrayed so lurid and so soap opera-ish. It was just ridiculous.
Number 16 is a movie that like physically hurts me to say the title, but I'm gonna have to bring myself to do it. Freddy Got Fingered.
Yeah, and it hurt me to have to sit through it once when I did. I was in the hospital after my car accident, and 20th Century Fox sent me a videotape of this movie to review. And I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. And they called me the next day to ask me what I thought of it, would I review it? And I said, no, I can't. I said, have you guys seen this? That was wretched. It topped just about every critic's 10 worst list in 2001. Tom Green is a very acquired taste as a comedian, and he's certainly not of my taste. I don't find him funny. I don't find him witty. I don't find him intelligent. I think he's a dumbass, and I think his movie is blatantly stupid. And, you know, he sits there grinding sausage and starts to sing a song to his father, Daddy, would you like some sausage? That's what I came away from that movie humming in my head.
Ugh.
And God damn him for that, because it took a couple days to shake it. It's just brutal on every level.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like I said, physically hurts me to say the title. It's an experience I'll never get back.
Yeah, I wanted to gouge my eyes out after seeing it. I hated it.
Coming in at number 15, we have The Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, this one puzzles me because Roland Joffe had made a couple great films. The Mission is a big, beautiful movie. The Killing Field was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, and him for Best Director. And for The Scarlet Letter, the great classic piece of literature, he cast Gary Oldman, Robert Duvall, and Demi Moore. And yeah, Demi Moore is out of her league, but surrounded by people like that, sometimes the work can be elevated. But then they change it. They change the ending of one of the greatest books of all time. And I don't understand why they did it. Duvall is embarrassed by the movie. He told me that. I said, have you ever made a film that personally embarrassed you to be a part of? No hesitation, The Scarlet Letter. He said, I don't know why I did it. I don't know, knowing that they were going to make the changes, why I did it. I don't know why Gary Oldman and I put up with the changes. And he said, what they put that poor girl through, meaning Demi Moore, was just unspeakable. And Joffe rarely worked after this movie.
Number 14 is King Kong Lives.
Yeah, I guess the fall from the World Trade Center in the 1976 remake didn't break every bone in his body, didn't splatter him all over the streets of New York, which a fall from the World Trade Center would do. Logically, I mean, physiologically, there's no way you survive a fall from that height. There's no way your body doesn't explode. And yet, somehow, they rushed Kong off inserted an artificial heart and kept him alive. And now the movie is all about finding him a mate and allowing them to live some degree in peace on a reserve somewhere in the United States. I mean, stupid, stupid, stupid. And the female Kong is physically correct. She has breasts. And you could hear the kids in the theater giggling every time she came on screen. Oh, look at, she's got boobies. And it was hysterical to listen to them. I mean, it was funny, but the movie wasn't intended to be funny and was just awful. I think the people that hold the license for Kong should have sued them, should have sued the shit out of them, because it's just an embarrassment.
Do female gorillas have noticeable breasts? I'm curious.
They do when they're feeding, they do, yeah, but
Wow.
not normally. Only when they're filled with milk.
Jesus. All right, number 13 is Jack.
Yeah, Francis Coppola, one of my heroes, one of the 5 greatest directors to live, decided he would make a film about a child who ages rapidly, and he cast Robin Williams. Well, that's a pretty good idea. If anyone can pull it off, Robin Williams can. Only he didn't. The movie is insulting. It is hypocritical. It's embarrassing. And Robin Williams, this is the worst performance he ever gave. He ages, I think it's 8 years to every year. So by the time he's graduating high school, he's nearly 100 years old. And of course, he's selected class valedictorian. And he stumbles up there, older than all the teachers, older than the principal, and gives a speech about how great life is going to be to everyone going forward. He's going to die in a couple of years. He'll probably die walking off the stage. But Coppola, I mean, my God, Coppola, what were you thinking? Did you not read it? Did you not recognize it while you were shooting it? How stupid it was? And all the obligatory scenes are in there. He's a young guy, but he looks 25. So of course one of his friend's mothers is going to seduce him. And of course it's going to be buxom Fran Drescher. You know, it's just a piece of garbage. I come out of that movie nearly in tears because Francis Coppola had directed something so bad.
Moving on to number 12. This one's notorious as shit. Glitter.
Yeah, I call it litter. The sad part about Glitter is that Mariah Carey proved 8 years later in Precious that she's a very good actress. I didn't recognize her when she came on screen in Precious. She had no makeup on, and she was playing the social worker trying to get to the bottom of the abuse in Precious life. And it's a real riveting piece of acting. Had she not been, like everyone else was, blown away by the performance of Monique in the film, Mariah Carey might have got herself an Oscar nomination. She certainly deserved it. In Glitter, Jesus, so bad on every level, just so bad on every level. And she plays a raging harpy. You don't want to be around this woman for any more than 30 seconds, because if you are, you're going to kill her. You're going to choke the life out of her, and the world's going to be a better place for it. Just a terrible, terrible movie.
All right, enough said. Number 11, I know you've riled against this one many, many times. Dirty Grandpa.
Yeah, I just hate this movie. I think Robert De Niro should be ashamed of himself for even making this movie. It's about a grandfather whose wife dies, and he takes his grandson on a trip to Miami. And the day after his beloved wife of 50 years or so has died, his sole purpose in life is to get laid by a much younger woman. And he encounters Aubrey Plaza, who I think is very funny. And she's up for it. She's up to sleeping with an old guy. And they keep trying to get it on all through the movie. But it's really embarrassing to see the guy that played Vito Corleone, Travis Bickle, Jake LaMotta, Rupert Pupkin running around trying to nail this young girl. And just a horrific movie, a car wreck on every level. And this is Robert De Niro's all-time stinker. You know, he can't go any lower than he does in this. Thank God for The Irishman, because it reminded us that he still has the goods when needed.
Coming in at number 10, we have Caligula.
Yeah, and I still encounter people who say, it wasn't that bad. Well, yeah, it really was. Caligula was meant to be the story of the crazy Roman emperor who was a masochist, a murderer, a paranoid schizophrenic, absolutely psychotic, and a sexual sadist. And Gore Vidal wrote a sensational screenplay, and Penthouse magazine decided they would put up the money and get into the movie making business. But what the actors didn't know, Malcolm McDowell, Peter O'Toole, John Gielgud, when they went home at night, Bob Guccione, the editor of Penthouse magazine, would move in with his models and porn actors and shoot sex scenes. And those scenes were cut into the movie. So when they saw the film for the first time, they had no idea that they were going to be a part of, really at the time, a hardcore pornographic movie, rated X, and they deserved the X. I mean, the original version I saw was pretty intense. I was embarrassed to be watching it with the girl I was with. I had no idea it was going to be like this. And, Malcolm McDowell has publicly disowned the movie. Peter O'Toole did. John Gielgud did. And sadly, McDowell is up for this. He's game. You can see that there's a great performance lurking there. And then we cut away to two women having sex with each other, or an orgy, or, all sorts of sexual perversions that you think, how much more degrading can they be in this film? It's horribly misogynistic towards women. And I don't know what Helen Mirren decided to do the film for. She's one of the greatest actresses of all time. Yet here she is in Caligula. Terrible, terrible film.
Coming in at number 9, Einkon. Am I saying that right?
Yep. And as I said to you before we went on tonight, I'm probably of maybe 100 people that have seen this dreadful war film. It was financed by the Reverend Sun Young Moon, who ran the cult of the Moonies in the early 80s. And he gave a director $100 million to make what he thought would be a hugely important movie. They cast Sir Laurence Olivier as General MacArthur, and he looked like General MacArthur had been embalmed for the movie. His cheeks were bright rosy red. He looked like an asshole, quite frankly. And I still run into people who think Laurence Olivier was the greatest actor in movie history. Bullshit to all that. He's an embarrassment here. As he had late in his career, he seems to be playing an old Jewish woman. That seems to be what he was doing from film to film to film. Gregory Peck gave a commanding, brilliant performance as MacArthur in the film of the same name in 1977. Probably should have been nominated for an Academy Award. He was terrific. Why not cast him? I mean, if the movie's going to be this much of a stinker, nobody's going to see it anyway. Nobody's going to know. I saw it on a bootleg videotape, and couldn't believe how terrible it was. Just couldn't believe it. Shots didn't match. The continuity was terrible. Horrible, horrible film.
Coming in at number 8 is an admittedly crappy film that I actually quite enjoy, Wild Wild West.
Well, at the beginning of the production for this, John Peters insisted on a giant spider. And we know that he insisted on a giant spider for the new Superman movie that was going to be with Kevin Smith. And that's one of the reasons one of the many reasons Kevin walked away from the film. John Peters was a hairdresser who was Barbra Streisand's boyfriend, who became a producer on A Star Is Born, and had pretty good film sense. I mean, he's made some pretty big movies. This wasn't one of them. Wild Wild West was a mild successful TV show in the 1960s with Robert Conrad. I saw it when I was a kid. I remember nothing about it, absolutely nothing. And on the big screen, they grabbed Will Smith, who was red hot and up and coming because of his TV show, and Kevin Kline, who's a solid actor, had won an Academy Award for A Fish Called Wanda, and is a good actor, can do anything. And, well, almost anything. He couldn't do this. He couldn't make this movie funny. He couldn't make it interesting. He couldn't make it anything. It was a colossal failure for the studio. It lost, I believe, $98 million and tanked in every way.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, admittedly bad, but for me, it's one of those so bad it's watchable type deals.
Tell me why you tell me why you say that. What about it interests you? Because I've seen it twice, and I will never see it again.
I
So
don't know.
what
Like
about it?
I
What
I,
about it
I
grabbed
like
you?
Will Smith. I think Kevin Kline doing the dual roles is kind of funny. It's interesting to look at. Kenneth Branagh's chewing it up really thick. It's just so silly and so stupid. I don't know. I just if it's on, I'll pause and I'll watch a few minutes of it. And that giant spider, I think of the Kevin Smith story, and it makes me laugh.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Number 7, of course, this one's on the list. The Conqueror.
Well, yeah, it had to be. It was one of the great bad movies of all time. And, you know, the great story of The Conqueror is that it was shot in the Mojave Desert where the military was doing atomic bomb testing. And all the cast and crew eventually died of cancer. John Wayne, Susan Hayward, the director, the writers, the producers, all of them passed away of cancer, probably because of the atomic testing. Now, the reason the movie's bad is because John Wayne is woefully miscast as Genghis Khan, the great Mongolian warrior. And he can't hide that voice. That voice is as distinct as the American prairie. You just can't hide the John Wayne voice, or the walk, or the presence. He looks like a fool with that stupid, drooping Fu Manchu mustache. And the lines he's forced to say, the dialogue is terrible. And poor Susan Hayward, not much better, forced to dress in skimpy outfits that showed off her body. And a wonderful actress. I mean, she won the Academy Award a few years later playing the killer Barbara Graham, who was executed, and deserved that Oscar. But here, the two of them, they have no chemistry. They have nothing. They have nothing. And they must have known that they were in so far over their heads they couldn't get out. And the only thing was to do the movie, let it be released, and hope people forget about it. Sadly, people haven't forgotten about it.
Yeah, this one can be described in its awfulness in a simple sentence. John Wayne is Genghis Khan. What else do you know?
Pretty much. I mean, people always argued with me, well, he couldn't do Shakespeare. Well, okay. Could Laurence Olivier do a Western? Could John Gielgud do a Western? They'd look pretty damn stupid in a Western. But John Wayne didn't. He was at home in Westerns. But he should have stayed there. In a period piece, no, he doesn't work. And he knew it. He never tried it again.
Yeah, I've never understood the argument that actors who kind of always do the same thing are not, like actors who don't have tremendous range aren't great actors. I mean, look at someone like Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
He's always kind of the same guy.
Pretty much. And John Wayne was usually a version or variation of the John Wayne persona. But people can't tell me he couldn't act. You watch him in Red River. He's one character. In The Quiet Man, he's another character. In The Searchers, he's spectacular in The Searchers. In True Grit, in The Shootist. When he was on, he was on. When he was in his element, he was as good as anybody on the screen. But when he wasn't, he was embarrassing. And in The Conqueror, he's embarrassing.
Number 6, let's talk about Showgirls.
Talk about so bad it's good. I mean, Paul Verhoeven's famous movie about Vegas showgirls is just so ridiculous. I mean, if it's on, you can't help but watch it. And I'm guilty. I am guilty as sin. If it's on, I'll leave it on because I can't quite believe what Elizabeth Berkley was permitted to do and thought was acting. If you watch her for 15 minutes in the movie, she slams down her Coke cup. She devours her hamburger in like 2 bites. She's just ferociously angry in every single scene she's in. And she maintains that through the whole movie, even when she's dancing, even when she's stripping. And no argument about her body, a spectacular body, but zero acting talent, or so we thought. In this movie, she's horrific. And she and Gina Gershwin have zero chemistry. Kyle MacLachlan is awful. Everything about the movie is awful. Elizabeth Berkley was more or less run out of the business after this movie because the failure of it was laid at her feet. She turned up a few years later in a Woody Allen film and was pretty good. And then she turned up in CSI Miami playing a very bad woman, and she's terrific. And, you know, now in her 40s, it's a shame that some of that talent wasn't used when she was younger. But unfortunately, she made this movie, and it ruined her. It ruined her.
Number 5 is a film based on a character who's actually showed up, a rebooted version in cameo roles in Marvel's universe, Guardians of the Galaxy. And if you look really, really, really close at the big final battle in Avengers Endgame, this guy is there. We're talking about Howard the Duck.
I remember the night I saw Howard the Duck. It was opening night, and the girl I was with at the time wanted to see it, and I didn't. I had read the comic a couple times. I knew what it was all about, but I also knew George Lucas had got a hold of it, and I'd seen some of the early production photos, and this was not Howard the Duck as written. And I was absolutely right. This is a big, fluffy, beautiful duck who's kind of a smart ass, and somehow he's sent through a portal in space to Earth, and absolutely out of place. Poor Leah Thompson is the young singer that he ends up having to stay with to stay safe, because there's a creature seeking him out on Earth. And there's a scene where they go to bed together. And I'm watching a mainstream G-rated movie with bestiality, and I couldn't fucking believe it. And that poor girl having to do the thing she was asked to do in that movie with this duck. I mean, unbelievable. Tim Robbins is in the film, and thank God he went on to better things. He owes his career to the TV series St. Elsewhere, where he played an IRA terrorist and was chilling, because here he's a complete buffoon. George Lucas, I don't know what he was thinking. Kind of indicative that he should have maybe stayed out of movies for a much longer time. Terrible.
I just have to mention, yeah, and I mean, of course, I agree on every level. I just have to mention something. I think, God, this might have been when the movie came out, before we got the site launched. We were talking film on Facebook, and you were like, who'd have thought Guardians of the Galaxy would have been such a massive success? And I chimed in and I said, I knew it was going to be good because of Marvel's record and because of what Joss Whedon had to say about the movie. And in a post-credit scene in Guardians of the Galaxy, Howard the Duck shows up as part of the collector's collection, which has now been destroyed. And I thought it was such a stroke of genius, because they knew they had such a hit on their hand that they basically said to the audience, it's like, this is going to be so good, you're going to stick Howard the fucking Duck at the end of this movie, and you will still line up to pay for the sequel. And people did.
Yeah, they did. Of course they did. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if that version of the character sees any more than just some cameo roles. He's voiced by Seth Green, but it's funny to see him in those Guardians movies and whatnot.
Rumor has it they are working on a Howard the Duck that's absolutely loyal to the countercultural comic that he originally was. He wasn't a fluffy, beautiful duck. He was an ass kicker. He was foul-mouthed. He smoked cigars. Yeah,
I'd like to see it.
Me too. I'd like to see that version, but not the Disney version that Lucas gave us. Jesus.
Yeah, let Kevin Smith do something with it.
Yes, he'd be perfect. He'd be perfect. Can you imagine what Scorsese would do with it? Holy shit.
Moving on to number 4, this one's very recent, and it's kind of the new low bar, Cats.
Cats. So where to start? Is it, kitty litter, hairball, whatever you want to call it? It was such a big, bad movie. Nobody could quite believe how terrible it was. It has lost, for Universal Studios, $165 million. And the director is Tom Hooper, who in 2010 won the Academy Award for A King's Speech. He went on to direct Les Miserables, which I struggle with because it's too many close-ups. He obviously learned, because Cats has very few close-ups. And I'm not sure if that was to showcase the set design or the movement of the actors as cats. It has one saving grace. The lead actress, Francesca Hayward, from the London Ballet Academy, is absolutely spectacular as Victoria, the cat who's put in a bag and tossed into the street and comes to join this group of Jellicle cats. I don't know what the hell a Jellicle cat is. It's based on the long-running Broadway show. And I spoke with a friend of mine, Lorena McKenzie, who had been in the original Toronto production of Cats when it came to Toronto. And she agreed with me on every single point of my horrible review of Cats. She agreed with everything I said. James Corden is a joke. He's embarrassing. Rebel Wilson, I don't know what the fuck she was doing. Judi Dench, a wonderful actress. I'm not sure what she was doing. This director shot a scene where Ian McKellen, one of the greatest actors in the English language, is lapping milk out of a saucer. It's the only time any cast member does it, and he has Ian McKellen do it. It's just so bad on so many levels. And some of the cats are barefoot, some of them wear tap shoes, some of them wear ballet shoes, some of them wear normal shoes. Why? Let's get some consistency. Some have cat hands, some don't. Some have human hands. How come? Is it a mistake? Is it continuity? It's just a complete fuck up of a movie.
It's interesting because I like Tom Hooper. I mean, I love The Damned United. I like his television work with John Adams.
John Adams, brilliant. You're right.
I love The King's Speech. I struggle with Les Miserables because I agree there are way too many close-ups.
Yeah.
It's under-directed, but I find it's a good movie, and I find there's a lot to admire about it. It's the first time you ever really had a musical that was sung through where they stayed true to that as opposed to writing in large chunks of dialogue.
That part works, and the fact that he had them sing as it was happening was exceptional. Eddie Redmayne singing the empty chairs and empty tables is gut-wrenching, but we were always on their faces. And had he pulled the camera back, the scene where Eponine is singing On My Own, if they'd have pulled the camera back and shot her overhead, the loneliness that she felt would have been so clear and so apparent rather than up close and personal.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Of course, Anne Hathaway deserved her Oscar for I Dreamed a Dream alone.
Oh, just for singing the song. People saw the trailer and that was it. She's got the Oscar. And she deserved it. She was great.
Yeah, I really admired the singing in camera thing. I even go to bat for Russell Crowe. He gets a lot of shit. I liked him as Javert. I was more disappointed with Hugh Jackman, who I'm a big fan of. His rendition of Bring Him Home was not good. It was
what I got sick of hearing during the whole award season was Tom Hooper, and he should know better, saying this film could not exist without Hugh Jackman. He is the definitive Jean Valjean. What the fuck about Colm Wilkinson, who created the character? Michael Burgess, who was the Toronto Jean Valjean. But Colm Wilkinson has a small part in the movie. He plays the priest who lets Valjean go and later brings him into heaven. He was the original Jean Valjean.
Yeah, I love his cameo in the movie.
Oh, and he was, you go back and watch the 25th anniversary or the 30th anniversary of Les Mis, he sings Valjean then. And he's a god, man. He's an acting god for this film, or rather play alone.
Yeah.
And for Hooper to make comments like it couldn't exist without Hugh Jackman, insulting, just insulting.
I liked Jackman as Jean Valjean for the most part. I just think when he needed to step up for like that signature song, he didn't really nail it home. Colm Wilkinson, you're right. He's a total rock star. He's released a pop compilation album of covers where he gets to sing some like American music, some country songs, and some rock and roll stuff, and he just nails it. This guy,
he's incredible.
Yeah.
He's massive talent.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you like The King's Speech. So do I. But no one will ever convince me it was a better film than Social Network or True Grit. Not in that year, not in 2010. Good film. Colin Firth was great, but no way it's better than those two films.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of that opinion, and I won't make a case against it, although I absolutely love The King's Speech. Me and my mom have watched it 100 times, and having my mom argued with me that Jeffrey Rush, she wanted him to win the Oscar over Christian Bale, and I said, look, Christian Bale is an English actor who plays this Bostonian crackhead boxer. Jeffrey Rush is an Australian who sort of sounds British, and he's an actor. And in The King's Speech, he's Australian and he sort of sounds British, and he plays an actor who knows vocal exercises. Like, he's not really stretching himself that much, although he is great in it.
He was great in the movie, and he and Firth had a lovely chemistry together, and Hooper shot that beautifully.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Number 3 on our list is Revolution. Another, it's funny, that's another title that's also a Beatles song.
Yeah. This was Hugh Hudson's big movie after his film Chariots of Fire won the Academy Award for Best Picture, besting Reds, which remains one of the great injustices in Oscar history. He had also directed Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan in 1984. So he was a widely respected filmmaker. He wanted to make a movie about the American Revolution. So he got his budget and he went away to make the film. He cast Al Pacino and a group of unknowns, with one exception, Donald Sutherland as a masochistic English general. And Annie Lennox of the group The Eurythmics has a part at the beginning of the film playing Lady Liberty. That's all she's known as in the credits. And all she does is scream for maybe 5 minutes and then she's gone. Al Pacino's Scottish accent goes in and out over the course of the movie. Sometimes it's there, sometimes he's doing his Bronx thing. It is terrible on every level. It's sadistic. Donald Sutherland plays a man who takes young boys to his tent at night and rapes them. And we're supposed to watch this. The one boy, Al Pacino's son, is tortured by this guy, and Pacino takes him to the Indians to heal him. And I'm not sure which was worse, the torturing or the healing. It's just a brutal, bloody movie, really about nothing. I mean, the revolution is a background story as far as I'm concerned. And Pacino was so stunned at the bad reviews he got, he walked away from movies for 3 years. He didn't make another film for 3 years. And when he came back, he was a shadow of what he had been.
The second entry on our list, coming in at number 2, this is one that's always fun to talk about, Battlefield Earth.
Oh, God. Written by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder and maniac that created Scientology. It's a science fiction epic that John Travolta vowed he would bring to the screen. And he did. He convinced Paramount to give him, I think, $85 million to make this terrible, ugly movie about a group of aliens who have been on Earth for 1,000 years and are mining out everything they need from it before moving on. They slaughter humans for no apparent reason, just because they can. They're 9 feet tall. They're ugly, but the movie's ugly. It's all set among rocks and dirt and dust. There's nothing pleasing to the eye to look at. Even the sky is always gray. Travolta plays a towering alien who has been sentenced to Earth really for 50 years. And he wants off. He hates it. He hates humans. He hates everything about his job, except the fact he can kill whenever he wants. Travolta is a good actor. I like John Travolta very much. I thought he was great in Saturday Night Fever, fun in Grease, remarkable in Blowout, terrific in Get Shorty, magnificent in Pulp Fiction. And he did a damn good Bill Clinton in Primary Colors. But here, he's a complete and utter failure, not to mention embarrassment. I don't know what he was thinking bringing this to the screen. He must have hung his head in shame every time he walked on the set, because he looks like a complete asshole. And Barry Pepper, who was so good in Saving Private Ryan as the religious young sniper, is every bit as terrible in the film as the human who's leading the rebellion against them. Forrest Whitaker, one of the greatest actors in movie history, so good as Idi Amin in The Last King of Scotland, is here as Travolta's cohort. He's bad, and he's never bad. It's just that horrific a movie, just a complete car wreck.
Yeah, well, I think I know what Travolta was thinking getting the movie made. He wanted to preach the gospel of Scientology.
Well, big mistake, man. Big mistake.
All right, before we come in with our first entry on the list, the worst film of all time, we're going to take a quick break and talk about the news. As you guys know, not a lot going on in movie news right now with the COVID crisis. A lot of studios are talking about releasing stuff straight to streaming, and release dates have been pushed back. I just wanted to do a quick news break today to talk about the passing of Jerry Stiller at age 92.
What a great actor. What a great actor. And I'm so happy that this generation gets to know him as Frank Costanza, father of my favorite TV character of all time, George Costanza. Frank was a hot-tempered, constantly angry man, contemptuous of his own son. He didn't like him, he didn't trust him, and always seemed to be screaming "Serenity now" or picking on someone for a fight. He picks a fist fight with Elaine in a police station, for Christ's sakes. I mean, just a priceless movie character. And he and Estelle Davis had beautiful chemistry together on Seinfeld, and everything about him on screen. When he came on screen in Seinfeld, I immediately started to laugh because you just never knew where it was going to go.
I completely agree. I love Seinfeld, and he was just so unbelievably hilarious. So many moments, but yeah, Serenity now. He was always screaming his dialogue, and I didn't know that George Costanza was your favorite TV character of all time, but man, I am fucking with you on that. Jason Alexander as George Costanza, by far the best thing about a great show that had a lot of great stuff in it. Jerry Stiller, father, of course, of Ben Stiller, played his son's character's agent in Tropic Thunder, and he was in Zoolander and did other stuff with Ben. 92 years old. Pretty good run.
Pretty good life. And he and his wife, Ann Mira, were a long-running comedy team in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They were on the Ed Sullivan Show, Johnny Carson, mainstays on network television at the time. And a real loss, you know, a great life. 92 years old, natural causes, so, you know, had a terrific life, but a real loss. And condolences to Ben Stiller.
Yeah. I think I just remembered maybe one of my favorite. Oh God, Festivus. I just remembered Festivus.
Oh, Festivus for the rest of us.
The airing of grievances. Oh, I remember one episode where George's parents were fooling around with the idea of getting divorced, and then I think Estelle just says, "I want a divorce," and without skipping a beat, Frank's just like, "You want a divorce? You got one!"
Yep.
Just screamed it out.
He was fantastic. He was fantastic. They said the biggest problem, if there was any problem with him on set, was that he was a great improviser, and the writers of the show liked the dialogue verbatim. They didn't like improvisation. My friend Kevin McDonald was on there one night. He played the denim jacket guy, and Kevin is a great improviser, but you weren't allowed to improvise on Seinfeld. You had to go strictly with the dialogue, which must have drove Jerry Stiller crazy.
Yeah. Great actor, great long life. Getting back to our list. We're coming in at number 1, John H. Foot's pick for the worst film ever made. I've known this for a while. I wasn't surprised to see it hit number 1 on your list. Exorcist II, The Heretic.
Yeah, I walked into this in 1977. I was 18, and no, I was 16, hoping John Boorman had made a decent sequel to The Exorcist. And about 20 minutes in, I knew we were in deep, deep trouble. A great cast: Richard Burton, Louise Fletcher, Linda Blair, James Earl Jones, and a script that seemed to be written in crayon by a psychedelic 5-year-old on a bad acid trip. It's just wretched. Linda Blair's character Reagan starts to have flashbacks to the exorcism, so we go back in time to see the first time Father Marin, played by Max von Sydow, first encountered the demon Pazuzu that possessed her in the first place. And it is stupid. It makes no sense. There's no coherent narrative. There's no storyline that runs 1, 2, and 3. It's all over the map. And the actors look embarrassed. You've got Richard Burton, who had the voice of God. That same year, he played Dr. Dicehart in Equus. And just to listen to him do his monologues in Equus was like a masterpiece theater version of elocution. He was perfect in the way he spoke. And here he's terrible. Louise Fletcher, who was Nurse Ratched in Cuckoo's Nest, is terrible. Everybody is terrible. And then they take it up a notch and seem to double just how terrible they can be. John Boorman, when he's on, is a great director. Deliverance, Hope and Glory. Hope and Glory is a wonderful war film, one of the great films of the 80s. But when he's off, he's really off. And here he was as off as he can be. In my 60 years on the planet, and my 30 years as a film critic, well, 40 years as a film critic, if we're going to be honest, I have never seen a worse film. I judge bad by The Exorcist Part 2, and I've never seen one that comes close. Battlefield Earth is not even close to how bad Exorcist II: The Heretic is. It's just a new low in terrible movie making.
There you have it, folks. The 25 worst movies ever made, as chosen by our founder, John H. Foote. Thanks to all our listeners for checking the show out. Look us up on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and especially YouTube. Hit that subscribe button for this. All past, present, and future episodes of our podcast. Got some cool shows coming up. John Allen and I are going to discuss the films of the 1980s, and we're going to do a spotlight on Robin Williams and one on Lucille Ball. Thanks for listening, folks. Until next time, we'll see you at the movies.